All right, so here is Hannah's picture. So she's really concerned about this water area up in here. How many of you guys have water in your picture? Just two of you guys? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by just getting like a really quick soft layer in here. And so I'm going to use my blending stub just really quick to get this layer in here so that I can just work on top of this. Now normally I would say start this off with a tissue rub. This is sort of my cheater fast way of doing a tissue rub. Notice I'm going in circles to smooth out where my edges are going around. Alright, now I'm just going to move this to the side here so I don't work on top of. Are you more concerned about this area right here or like what's above? Okay. Alright, and oh look, I have a nice dirty, oh look at that, dirty tissue. Fabulous. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and label this bad boy water. Now, usually you guys have all of the information already there. Since I'm starting from scratch, I'm just going to do like a loose sketch here of the water shapes that I see. Now I'm going to start with a 2B because it's easier if I need to go darker. It's harder to get lighter again. So it's better to build up on your layers. I'm going to use the side of the pencil technique. And the reason for that is this water in here is really smooth and it's kind of blurry. So I don't want to have a lot of definition to it. So I want to make sure that I'm using a technique that's going to allow for a soft blend. I'm going to do that. Alright, so I'm just going to use the side of the pencil here to fill in this darker shape. And then I noticed that above here, can you see how it's fading away from this darkness? So it's gradating out. So I'm just going to allow for some gradation to happen. And I'm going to curve with this shape. Okay, I'm also going to go ahead and add some of this darker lines that are coming off of this area here. I'm going to move that again so I'm not drawing on top of your photo. And I'm one of those people that I like to move my drawings around while I'm working on them to get a better angle because I'm old now and my hands get kind of sore. So for me, I'd rather twist the paper around than twist my wrist in some strange angle. Don't be afraid also if you guys need to stand up and work on your art piece. Whatever you need to do. So I'm just going in and I'm shading in some of the areas that needed to be in there. And right now it looks pretty messy, right? It's not the most beautiful thing you've ever seen yet. So I'm going to take my blending stub. And first I'm going to blend the edges of where the two values meet. This is going to help to soften them and to blend them into each other to create a gradation. Then I'm going to go ahead and work into the middle of this area. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come out on the edge, blend the edges. And I'm going to also try to blend the direction of my water too. That's going to help me in the long run. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and blend on the inside. Okay, so far I've just got some dark values here and some medium gray values. I'm going to come back in now and take my eraser. And for this one I'm not going to use the eraser pencil because some of these marks are a little bit bigger than the eraser pencil. So I'm going to come in and start with just using the edge of the eraser. So I'm just using the very edge right here. And start by putting some of these highlighted areas in. And then over in here is a little bit of a lighter spot, so I'm going to add that in. There's a couple of little marks in here that alright, and a little bit of a softer. So now up in here where I want the eraser to be softer, I'm going to use the flat edge of the eraser. And what happens is when I rub, because I'm not pushing very hard, the eraser is actually going to do two things. It's going to lift some of the graphite, but it's also going to smear some of the graphite. And so that's going to create a soft erase. See how soft that was? Now up in here it needs to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to add a little bit more pressure. And down in here is going to be a little bit lighter. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and use the blending stub again. And see how bright white these marks are? They really stand out too much. So I'm going to go ahead and just blend the edges. Every time you blend the edges, you're creating a very soft gradient on the edge, which allows the object to fade into each other and creates the illusion of being three-dimensional. And this is a technique you guys can use on pretty much everything that you're going to do. Okay, finally I'm going to come back to my 2B and I'm going to look at where in here needs to be a little bit more value. And I'm just going to gently use the side of my pencil to get a little bit more of this darker value right in here to help define the shape a little bit more. And then in between, like all of this, there's all of this area in here that needs some more definition. So I'm going to come back in with the pencil. And this is where I can go back and forth between using the tip of the pencil and the side of the pencil if I want to create some of those little nooks and crannies inside of this bad boy. So, and I believe what that reflection is in there, I think it actually might be like another turtle farther up, like just the fin coming through. And I'm going to use a different blending stub. I'm just going to go ahead and blend this in. So same thing, I'm just going on the edges here and I'm just blending those edges so that it fades in and doesn't stand out too much. Okay, there you go. Fabulous. All right, here you are, Miss Hannah. All right, let's go back to the random name. Who's gonna be the winner? Mickey. All right. The neck area, okay. Sounds good. Let's move that friendly. All right, so here's Mickey's picture. So the area she's really concerned about is this wrinkly area in here. So do any of you guys have like a really wrinkly creature? You do? A couple of you guys do. Some people in my other class period will be happy because I know they have some wrinkly creatures. So same thing, I'm going to start off with a tissue rub. So I'm just going to take my really dirty tissue here. I'll just do it right next to the water. We'll just like tissue rub away here. And I'm going to just start with a loose sketch of these wrinkles. So you guys are lucky because you've already done all these beautiful contour lines that are helping you out. Alright, so there's some loose sketching of some wrinkles. And same thing, I'm just going to start off with my 2B. Notice I prefer to use the side of the pencil a lot. I just feel like I have better control over getting a nice smooth gradient. So in this area up in here, it's a lot darker, so I'm going to use a little bit more pressure. Oh, I've got some schmuck in my table. So see how I was picking up a mark in the table? Okay, I'll just move this down here. That's why you guys are using drawing boards for this assignment, because there are marks on the tables. And I'm just going to start by shading in where I see the values changing. Wrinkles are actually not as hard as they look. It just takes patience and really looking to see where those dark and light shapes are next to each other. Okay, magic blending stub again. And I'm just going to go here and blend these all out. Okay. Now if you look carefully, you can see there's some areas that are still light gray, medium gray, and dark gray. That's good because it's going to help me when I go back and start to erase. I'm going to look for those lighter pockets, and those are where I'm going to erase. So right now I'm just going to come back in and add a few more of my darker values. And actually I'm going to go ahead and switch to a darker pencil here. I'm going to switch to a 4B because this area in here is fairly dark right above here, and I just want to get that high contrast in. Remember that other really exciting vocab word? So I'm going to get this all in here, and then down and over in here there's a little bit darker. That's going to help this to pop when we get all that high contrast in here. And I'm going to switch back to my 2B just for some interior wrinkles. And once again, I'm going to blend out. I'm going to switch blenders. That one's a little saturated. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and get my eraser pencil because this area is a really small area. So I'm going to want to use the eraser pencil versus a big eraser. And I'm going to look on these edges where I should see some brighter values. I'm going to go ahead and sort of massage these bad boys in. And I'm also looking for where are these lighter areas in my gray. And those are the areas that I'm actually going to pick up the eraser in. And then over in here there's a lot of jaggedy, kind of wrinkly, small wrinkles. So when I erase, I'm not erasing straight, I'm kind of erasing like I'm drunk, where my hand is just sort of wiggling back and forth, and that way I get a more organic erasure. Okay, what do you guys think is the next step? Yeah, exactly. I'm going to blend these edges of the white. And I have all different size blending stubs. I don't know if you guys saw the bag here. I have another bag of tinier ones than this. So when you guys, for some of you, when you have really tiny areas in the eyes that you want to blend, these little bad guys are for you. So I'm just actually going to blend the edges here, and I'm going to do little circles. I don't know if you can see these little circle motion I'm doing. That's because I want this to be really soft on this edge, more so than just from rubbing. Okay. Now this is starting to look pretty nice, but it needs something else. What else does it need, you guys? What am I missing in this area? So I'm just looking at this little texture area in between my hands. What am I missing? Well, I got the dark part right there, right? Just part of it. Okay, you feel like more defined lines? What about all of these little dots here? Can you guys see that? Right in this area. Do you see all of that? Okay, there's a lot of texture that's in here. Implied texture. So, this is where I'm going to go back to the Wayback Machine. Remember our little texture and value chart we did? We learned about different ways to apply texture. So I could stipple. I could also even use like little symbols or something to create like little nooks and crannies. This has a more of a circular feel to it. So I'm going to go ahead and actually stipple because I think that would be the best technique for this area at this time. Notice I'm not going crazy with my stippling. I'm not like pounding the table. I'm being very strategic. And I'm using a 4B right now, in case you wanted to know which pencil am I stippling with. And I'm looking at where I can see a little bit more areas for texture, and that's where I'm adding that stippling. Okay, and then these areas in here are a little smoother, but I want to add a little bit more oomph. So I'm going to add that in there. I can also do this, where I'm using little technical scribbles, little tiny scribbles, to create some more texture. How does that feel to you guys now? Does that feel more wrinkly and textured? So that was just a combination of stippling and little teeny tiny wiggly scribbles on top of each other, just to create a little bit more oomph. Now in this area right here, it blurs. So that's why I didn't do it over here, because I don't want to add tons of texture everywhere. If you add tons of texture everywhere, even in the areas that look blurred, what happens is our eye goes, where do I focus? Because the camera automatically focuses on in a certain area, and it'll make some areas crisper, and then the other areas will sort of fade. So we don't want to get that. That also, because see how crisp this leg is? Because that's crisp, we know that the leg is in front of this object. So that's the other thing you want to think about, is layering with your depths. Okay, so Mickey, here is this. I'm just going to write turtle. All right, let's see who the ninja picks. Side. All right. In the inside of the mouth, okay? So this is Zai's fish. I forget what kind of fish it is. Goblin shark, okay. So he's really concerned about this inner area of the mouth. See where all these really crazy teeth are? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick like a little section, probably at the tip of this triangle here. I think that would be best. Same thing. I love myself some tissue rib. Alrighty. And I'm going to go back to my 2B, my go-to pencil. So I'm just going to draw right now the edge of the mouth here. And let's get like this tooth in here. And I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of detail in that tooth so I can draw that. And then I'm noticing when the off of the tooth comes this weird little shape, almost like a key. And then there's these little pockets. Would you agree with that assessment, Zai? Yeah. Okay, fabulous. Happy to hear that. Okay. And then right at this edge, the teeth this kind of curves up, and then this gets darker again. I'll put in one more tooth. I'll put in one tooth that's going up into. All right. So that's my little toothy area, so we'll just label this goblin shark mouth. Okay, same thing, 2B. I'm going to start first on the tooth, and because the tooth is such a small area, I'm not going to use the side of the pencil, I'm going to use the tip because I have more control. And I'm going to fill in these little gray pockets that need to be in shadow. And also where the gum and the tooth meets, there needs to be a little bit of a shadow. Here's the thing, whenever you guys are shading like an eyeball or anything where that's overlapping, there's always a shadow. So if you look really carefully at your eye next time, you'll notice that there is a shadow of your eyelid going across the top of your eye. Same thing with your mouth. When you go like this, there should be a shadow of where your gums are over your teeth. So I'm going to add that shadow. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to start by first shading this area into a medium gray. And then on the edges where it's a little bit darker, I'm going to push a little harder and fill in that shape. I'm going to do the same thing here where there's this little shape in there. I'm going to come on the side here. I'm going to watch this shape a little bit more because there's a highlighted area in there. So I don't want to cover that all the way up. And then right up in here, this is where I'm going to switch to the side of the pencil because this is sort of a darker mark that goes along the top here, and I want that to be a soft shade. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this little guy in here. Okay, blending stub time. So I'm going to blend the edge of this first, and I'm going to blend it down into the gum line. And I'm going to continue to soften it until it smooths in where you can barely see the transition. On this side, I'm going to put a lot more pressure. I'm going to try to keep that fairly dark and consistent. I'm going to switch to the tip, and I'm going to blend in the interior of this mouth, and then I'm going to blend the edge. So the same thing over here. I'm going to blend that in, use the edge, blend this in, blend the edge. And now, because this is such a small area, I'm going to switch to my smaller blending stub so that I can blend in this tooth with the same precision and detail I did with my pencil strokes. Now right now, this tooth is a lot darker than it actually should be in the picture, correct? So this would be a case where, because this is such a small space, the tiny, tiny pencil eraser would be best. So I'm going to look at this very carefully, and I notice that the edge here is much brighter. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that in. And I'm going to do the same thing on this edge where the light is hitting it. And then I'm actually going to stipple with the eraser pencil to just erase a little bit of some highlights in here without erasing too much of my shadows. Plus, we know the shark don't brush his teeth, so we don't want him to give him perfectly pearly whites. I'm going to switch over now, and I'm going to just brush in some of these highlighted spots. And there's this little spot right up in here where there's kind of the stroke marks, which gives it a little bit of texture that's brighter. So I'm going to put those in, and I'm going to be blending them out in just a bit. Okay, there's this little highlighted area in here, and right around on the edge in here. And now I'm going to take the blending stub, and I'm going to blend the edges of this white value. So I'm taking the smaller one because I want to do these little circle blends. And then up in here, I'm just going to stroke over this back and forth. And notice that my wrist and my finger movement is curved. That's because this surface is a round surface, and we want to give further the illusion that it's round by making curved strokes. Okay, I'm going to little circle rubs in here, just nice smoothing out of the gradient. And then the last thing I want to do is there really isn't any high contrast at this point. And normally that would come from your picture from the background because it's dark in between the teeth. But I do want to add a little bit more of this darker spot in here. So I'm going to come back with the 4B now. Get a little bit more of that dark. And then you can see that if I was to really lay on the value on the outside of this. Actually, let me switch over to, let's do this. Just because I can do this a little faster this way. Now see the difference with that high contrast there, how that pops everything? And without that, it didn't really pop forward at all, did it? So that's why these really intense values, having the really light and the really dark next to each other, are so important. Because that's what's going to make your images pop out and look more three-dimensional. Okay, is that good for you, sir? Yeah, go ahead. welcome. Here's your picture. All right. And let's go to who is the next lucky winner. Tyler. All right, Tyler. Like the whole eyeball?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tell you guys my favorite part of any drawing is the eyes. I love drawing eyes. It is absolutely my favorite. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yep. Somebody's nasty here. All right. So same thing. I'm just going to really quickly do a quick tissue rub. And I love me some tiger eyes. Now, tigers, big cats were actually one of my favorite things to draw when I was in high school. So I used to draw with these color pencils called Prismacolors, and I would sit there and draw every single hair individually on the tiger's face and stay up until like 4 in the morning. It was insane. And then I'd go to school the next day. And my teachers would be like, "Were you staying up all night playing video games?" Nope, I was drawing. I know, total nerd. Alright, so I'm just drawing really quickly some of the areas, making sure that I leave some of these spaces in here. And then we have this, which curves up like that. Alright, is that really quick? There's your eyeball. Okay, in order to expedite this, do I have, oh, I left my woodless graphite pencils at home. Poop. So, they make pencils like this. This whole pencil is a giant stick of graphite. These are great. Unfortunately, this one's only HB. Actually, that's pretty dark. I'll go with it. So what I'm going to do really quickly, this whole area up in here is fairly dark. Do you guys agree? Oh, you can't even see it. There you go. Whoop. But if you notice, see how it's like fading into the white area? So the trick with tigers and any like animal where we have a lot of dark stripes is on the edge here, we're just going to kind of make it a little jaggedy, going the direction that the fur is going in the picture. I told you I like to move my paper all the way around. This is because I want to use the side of the pencil to get a nice dark mark, but I also want to control this. Okay, and I'm going to come down into here. Now, this one's only an HB, so it's not getting as dark as I would prefer, but this is still pretty good for an HB. I'm pretty impressed. Now, my lines are a little more jaggedy. I am going to clean them up in just a minute with a 6B pencil. But this is a way to get some dark value in here right away. Okay, and there's some little spots right there. Alright, so that's the first part. Now, the blending stub is going to be your BFF when you have a tiger. Anytime you draw the tiger stripe, you're going to use the blending stub like a pencil and blend away like you're drawing fur. I'm going to go ahead and blend the edges of all of this out. And then I'm going to use my blending stub to bring some of this dark value from the outside of the eye to the inside of the eye. And I am going to do the same thing on the inside. Now I'm not going to use the big pencil for that. I'm going to go ahead and switch to a 6B. Hello, 6B. ¿Dónde está? Somebody has taken my 6B. The bell is about to ring? Oh, time flies when you're having fun. All right, well, go ahead and you guys can send one person up to put your photos away, and I'm just going to continue to draw this eyeball right now.
Can you take a picture of that tomorrow? And it's like, or Wednesday?
Yeah, totally. Yep, go ahead. It's not even done yet.
Wait, we were supposed to answer this?
This is
Oh,
let's bring a bowl to tonight. Bring a bowl.
All right, so that's as much as I'll finish recording right now, but what I'll do is what I'm gonna do is, see how these areas I blended it in?
yeah.
I'm gonna come back with the eraser and just gently like rub against them, and they've come back out. And what happens is that looks a little bit more like they're wet. Okay? And I'll do that on the other parts of this, okay?